Welcome, let's talk about serial killers. My name is Sheesh Merriweather and I'm the founder of Crime Viral Online. Today I'll be doing what I do best, which is talking about serial killers. Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night wondering what type of serial killer you would be? Would you be a disorganized mess in a cold-blooded rampage, or would you be the more organized type that plans each murder with meticulous detail? Because these are, according to top criminal profilers, the two types of serial killers that are out there. So in today's video, we are going to take a look at these two types as you're about to watch Organized versus Disorganized Serial Killers, the key differences explained. Serial killers all have a unique fingerprint, but they also have a unique psychological fingerprint, and this is left behind at every crime scene. Detectives are able to look at a crime scene and determine what type of serial killer committed the crime. This psychological fingerprint will also reveal if the serial killer is either organized or disorganized. The theory itself was first introduced by the original super squad of criminal profiling in the FBI Training Academy at Quantico, Virginia, Special Agents Robert Ressler and Burgess and John Douglas in 1986. They carried out in-depth prison interviews with serial killers including Ted Bundy, Ed Kemper, Jerome Brudos, John Wayne Gacy, Richard Speck, David Berkowitz, Wayne Williams, and cult leader Charles Manson, just to name a few. What a career, right? This classification of serial murderers still holds up pretty well to this day. In the book Serial Murder by Ronald M. Holmes and Stephen T. Holmes, they write, what this approach does do, and it appears to do this well, is to examine the crime scene characteristics and then from that information describe the type of person who may have committed the crime. So you have a clear example to follow. I will be using the criminal profiles of serial killers Gary Green River Killer Ridgway and Richard Chase, also known as the Vampire of Sacramento. But first we have a treat from our sponsors for all you true crime fans. Magellan TV is a new type of documentary streaming membership founded by filmmakers. Their team of producers and curators brings together premium content that dives deep into important documentary subjects. Magellan TV has the richest and most varied true crime content available anywhere. What makes this collection so unique is that it takes you into such fascinating areas as the link between crime and the paranormal, and deep dives into the great villains and criminals of history. Magellan TV also has some of the best collections available in history, science, nature, and space. There are so many great choices, it's hard to stop watching once you start. Magellan TV has over 3,000 documentaries to choose from. New programs are added on a weekly basis. Even better, there's a growing selection of shows available in 4K without additional cost. Best of all, no ads, no commercial interruptions. I've just finished watching Manson's Missing Victims. I know so many of you are fascinated by the notorious cult leader, and this documentary was a huge eye-opener for me, as they explain there might be even more Manson family victims buried out at the Barker Ranch. This focuses on a great man and dog team who try to find the bodies. Buster the cadaver search dog is basically a hero. You can watch Magellan TV on any device or connected TV. You can even cast from your phone to your TV. It's super easy to use, so check it out now. Click the link below to get a full month free. First, we will take a look at the offender. Organized serial killers are often described as leading orderly lives. They are of average to high intelligence, socially competent, employed, married, or living with a domestic partner. These types of serial killers are who we often say are hiding in plain sight. This is the Gary Ridgway that we know, finally captured after murdering 48 women, pictured here as details of his horrendous Green River Killer murders are being read out to a courtroom. But this is the Gary Ridgway that his wife, children, colleagues, neighbours know. Organized serial killers show no remorse for their crimes, but they are not insane. They are able to compartmentalize their crimes so they can lead these double lives. We have another video on this channel all about serial killers and compartmentalization if you wish to check that out also. So when these types of serial killers are arrested, like in the case of Ridgway, those who knew him were genuinely shocked. On the other hand, we have disorganized serial killers like Richard Chase, who killed 6 people in the space of 1 month. And he also drank their blood, which earned him the nickname the Vampire of Sacramento. When Chase was arrested, those who knew him were more like, yeah, kind of always thought that guy would be a serial killer. Disorganized serial killers are usually under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or mentally ill. They often have below average intelligence and they have little or no social skills. They also typically come from an unstable or dysfunctional family. Due to their dysfunctional personalities, they usually live alone, and in the case of Chase, his roommates eventually kicked him out because he refused to wear clothes around the house. This kind of disorganized serial killer also struggled to hold down a job. During the actual murders committed at their own hands, they are often frightened or confused, as they are probably suffering from one or more forms of paranoid psychosis. Paranoid schizophrenia, for example, usually first manifests itself in the teenage years. Then it takes around 8 to 10 years to develop into full-blown psychosis that we see in disorganized serial killers like Chase. So typically they will strike out in their mid-20s. For organized serial killers, the average age is usually in the late 20s, around 27 years old, or for female serial killers, around 31 years old. So disorganized serial killers are usually younger than organized serial killers. Now we'll take a look at the crime scene. Organized serial killers tend to operate at 3 separate crime scenes, where they first approach the victim, then when they kill the victim, and then later where the victim's body is disposed of. Ridgway targeted sex workers. He said, "I picked prostitutes as victims because they were easy to pick up without being noticed. I knew they would not be reported missing right away, or they might never be reported missing." It is part of the job description as a sex worker to go with the client when they pick you up. So for an organized serial killer like Ridgway, that target, these vulnerable women, that eliminates that problem of relocating them from crime scene number 1 to crime scene number 2. A quiet, isolated place or area where the murder takes place. As the murder is premeditated and carefully planned, there will be little evidence found at the scene of the crime. Also, these types of serial killers are often very difficult to capture because they are quite savvy when it comes to forensics. They tend to tamper with the crime scene, such as planting misleading evidence. For a man who barely graduated high school and with a below average IQ, Ridgway had an intuitive understanding of forensics. He meticulously hid their bodies and any evidence that might link him to the crime. If the victim scratched him, he clipped their fingernails. If tire tracks were found at the scene of the crime, he bought new tires. In one case, when he was scratched, he poured battery acid on his arm to cover the wound. And he planted bogus clues and repeatedly relocated his victims' remains. Ridgway thought guns and knives were messy, so he killed his victims by strangulation. This also eliminates the problem of having to hide the murder weapon later. Murders at the hands of a disorganized type are not planned, and the killer will typically leave evidence such as fingerprints or blood at the scene of the murder. They often do not have reliable transportation, so they kill their victims closer to home than organized serial killers. If detectives then come across a disorganized crime scene, they can assume the killer is likely living in the local area. Disorganized crime scenes often have an appearance that the place has been ransacked. There will generally be clothing or household items scattered around. They typically leave a lot of forensic evidence behind, including blood, semen, fingerprints, and even the murder weapon itself. The crime scene that police uncovered following one of the murders at the hands of Chase gave the responding police officers nightmares for many nights to come. They found the victim, a 22-year-old woman who was 3 months pregnant, murdered at her home. Her abdomen had been slashed, the intestines were protruding from the gaping wound, and several of her organs were missing. There was also evidence that the victim's blood had been collected in a yogurt pot and drunk. Moving on to the victim. So disorganized serial killers will often blitz their victim. That is the use of sudden and overwhelming force to assault them. The victim's body is usually left where the attack took place, and the killer makes no attempt to hide it. Also, with disorganized serial killers, the murder weapon is often improvised. They might use items in the victim's household to bludgeon them to death, or they'll take knives from the drawer. Disorganized serial killers are often a lot easier to catch because they have no issue in leaving the crime scene with the front of their shirt covered in the victim's blood. That is exactly how Richard Chase was caught. His former classmates saw him looking thin, disheveled, and sort of out of sorts, and his shirt was covered in blood. When police staked out his home and the serial killer tried to make a run for it, they were finally able to gain entry into his apartment of horrors. Inside the apartment, they found a bloody 12-inch knife. They found boots that he'd worn at the crime scene, human blood in the food blender, body parts in the refrigerator, and a container that held brain tissue. So the police were like, not to jump to any conclusions here, but this might be the guy who's been going around committing all these gruesome and crazy murders. In complete contrast, organized serial killers typically plan the attack in advance. They often stalk the perfect victim before they have enough confidence to move in for the kill. Due to this forward planning, they will typically use restraints that they have brought to the crime scene in what they call a kill kit. The motives behind these killings are also different. Organized serial killers usually kill after undergoing some sort of stressful event, such as financial, relationship, or employment problems. They then strike out to feel the power they believe this stressful event has deprived them of. Although they appear to be skilled socially, they fail to handle stressful situations as they have internalized childhood memories of humiliation, shame, or abuse. This was very apparent with Ridgway. He had a serious bedwetting problem as a child, and his mother paraded him around naked in front of his siblings and washed his genitals in front of them too. He would later tell psychologists that as a teenager he had conflicting feelings of anger and sexual attraction towards his mother, and he fantasized about killing her. This was reflected later in his murders. Ridgway committed what is known psychologically as serial matricide, the symbolic killing of his mother over and over again. Disorganized serial killers tend to kill because there is an opportunity to kill. From the age of 15, Chase had begun using alcohol, marijuana, and LSD. 2 years before the murders took place, his mental health was in rapid decline as he had begun injecting rabbit's blood into his veins. Following his arrest, whilst he was behind bars, Chase had saved up his antidepressant pills and died of a fatal overdose. He was 30 years old. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Don't forget to comment below with future videos that you'd like to see, and also to like and subscribe.